Dan Ariely's Predictably Irrational is a fun, eye-opening tour of the mind's irrational side. It turns out that when we think we're making logical choices, we're often being subtly misled by our own psychology. As Ariely puts it, once you see how systematic certain mistakes are, how we repeat them again and again, I think you will begin to learn how to avoid some of them. The book presents a series of clever experiments demonstrating that our bad decisions aren't random, they're predictable. In this overview, we'll unpack some of the book's most important and entertaining ideas, from why free can cost us, to how having too many choices can paralyze us. And don't worry, we'll keep it simple, practical, and throw in a dose of humor along the way. Spoiler, humans are about as rational as a chimpanzee with a credit card. But at least now we can laugh about it. Let's dive into the key insights that will make you re-examine why you do what you do. Each section includes a visual metaphor for a scene you might illustrate in a video, and plenty of real experiment results from Ariely's research. Ready to find out how predictably weird our brains really are? One of the first lessons is that we decide by comparison. We don't know an option's absolute value, so we judge it relative to others. Ariely calls this the truth about relativity. Our minds constantly compare things, even things that shouldn't be compared. For example, imagine you're choosing a honeymoon. You see a Paris package and 2 Rome packages. One of the Rome packages is clearly worse. No free breakfast. Ariely found most people will choose Rome with free breakfast because compared to the Decoy option of Rome without breakfast, it looks great. Paris versus Rome is hard to compare, but Rome versus Rome, one with breakfast, one without, is easy. So we take the easy comparison and let the inferior, no breakfast Rome make the better Rome look like a no-brainer. This is the decoy effect in action. The inferior option is a secret agent guiding you to its slightly better twin. Ariely demonstrated this with a real ad from The Economist. Students were offered 1 web-only subscription for $59, 2 print-only for $125, 3 web print for $125. Nobody chose print-only, option 2. Why would they? It's clearly worse than option 3 at the same price, but its mere presence hugely influenced choice. 84% chose the combo deal when Ariely removed the decoy, option 2, and asked another group. The majority, 68%, now picked the cheaper $59 web-only deal. The expensive, useless option had made the combo seem reasonable by comparison. Pretty sneaky, huh? As Ariely quips, if you want to look good on a date, bring a friend who's slightly less attractive than you. By comparison, you'll seem like a star. Just don't tell your friend about this. The downside is that constant comparison can make us miserable. We gauge our success, looks, and possessions relative to others. There's always someone richer, prettier, or with a faster car. The more we have, the more we want, Ariely observes. Chasing the Joneses is a race with no finish line. His advice? Stop the cycle of relativity by controlling your comparisons. For instance, limit your exposure to envy triggers. If browsing mansions on Zillow makes you hate your nice home, maybe stick to looking at houses in your price range, or broaden your perspective. Before upgrading your phone, think how else you could spend that $1,000. Maybe a vacation or savings would bring more happiness. In short, be aware that your brain is always looking for a frame of reference. You can tweak the frame to be happier, or marketers will tweak it for you. Have you ever noticed how the first piece of information you get, like the first price quoted, sticks in your mind? That's anchoring. Our decisions can be anchored by arbitrary initial values, and we then adjust around that anchor, often insufficiently. Ariely calls this phenomenon arbitrary coherence. The first decision or number is arbitrary, but it coherently influences subsequent decisions. Once a price or idea is established in our minds, it shapes our expectations moving forward. For example, black pearls were initially unwanted until clever marketing anchored them as precious. Suddenly people were willing to pay high prices. Our internal sense of what's a fair price for anything, TVs, lattes, salaries, often comes from whatever number we happen to encounter first. We get stuck on that first number in one MIT experiment. Students wrote down the last 2 digits of their social security number, then were asked if they'd pay that amount. For example, $73 or $9 for items like wine or chocolate. Remarkably, those with high SSN digits were willing to pay much more on average, even though the SSN is random. That random number became an anchor. In another example, if you grew up seeing milk cost $3, that feels normal, whereas someone else anchored on $1.50 will feel $3 is outrageous. The first imprint of price sticks. We even anchor on our own past behavior. If you once paid $5 for a cappuccino and enjoyed it, you've anchored yourself to that habit. Next time you might do it again, thinking it's your preference, when it's really just your brain saying we did this before, so let's repeat. Ariely calls this self-herding. Anchors also explain why supply and demand isn't as independent as economists like to think. Once a certain price becomes an anchor, our demand can be manipulated. Ariely argues that what we're willing to pay, demand, often has nothing to do with intrinsic value and everything to do with past anchors and marketing. A fanciful example. A manufacturer slaps a suggested retail price, $1,000 on a new gadget. Even if it later discounts it to $500, our mind treats $1,000 as the anchor and $500 as a bargain, rather than evaluating from scratch. In fact, Ariely says the relationship between supply and demand is based more on memory, anchors, than pure rational evaluation of utility. The lesson? Beware of anchors. The first number or idea you encounter can unduly influence you. Before buying, pause and ask, am I making this choice just because I'm anchored on something? Sometimes deliberately exposing yourself to a different reference, say, checking a price comparison or waiting a day, can loosen the anchor's hold. Don't let a random starting point dictate your destiny or your wallet. Remember, your gut sense of a fair deal might just be the echo of an old number. Who doesn't love a freebie? Our irrational love of free is so strong that it can cloud our judgment. Ariely shows that the word free gives us an emotional rush that makes us forget the downsides. In one experiment, researchers offered people a choice: a high-quality lint truffle for 15 cents or a common Hershey's Kiss for 1 cent. Most chose the superior lint at that bargain price. But when they dropped each price by 1 cent, making the truffle 14 cents and the kiss free, suddenly the majority grabbed the free kiss. The relative difference was the same: 14 cents versus 0 cents versus 15 cents versus 1 cent. But free. Utterly changed behavior. People went for the worse candy just to get something free. As Ariely writes, most transactions have an upside and a downside, but when something is free, we forget the downside. Free gives us such an emotional charge that we perceive what is being offered as immensely more valuable than it really is. This zero price effect makes us irrationally excited about freebies. We'll wait in a long line for a free ice cream cone, even if we wouldn't pay $1 for it, thus spending an hour of our time for a treat we value far less. We grab swag bags full of free junk we'll never use simply because it's free. We might buy 2 of something we don't really need just to get a 3rd one free. Free feels great. We eliminate the feeling of risk or loss that comes with any purchase. Normally, when you pay, there's a chance you'll regret it if it's not worth the cost. But if it's free, hey, no downside. At least that's how our brains react. Yet free can backfire. Sometimes we'd be better off choosing the option that's a tiny bit costly but more valuable, or just not taking something we don't need. Ariely points out that free deals can make us ignore the real trade-offs. For instance, Amazon once offered free shipping above a certain purchase threshold. People bought extra books they didn't actually want just to avoid a shipping fee, effectively spending more money to get a free $3.99 shipping. In France, one region misprinted the deal as 1 franc, about 20 cents, shipping, instead of free, and people there sensibly didn't add unnecessary items, whereas elsewhere they did. It shows a minuscule cost, 20 cents, versus 0, made a big difference in behavior. We just can't resist 0. The takeaway: free isn't actually free. There's always a cost. Time, opportunity, quality. Be mindful when you see free in big letters. Ask yourself, if this cost even a tiny amount, would I still want it? Is the free item actually the one I prefer? Or am I just hypnotized by that magic word? You don't need to hoard hotel soap or suffer a boring seminar just for a free bagel. Consider the whole deal, not just the $0 price. As Ariely humorously notes, we could save money and get better outcomes if we didn't react to free the way we do. So enjoy freebies, but don't lose your head. Sometimes, paying a little is actually the better deal, and your closet will thank you. Here, humans live in two worlds, one governed by social norms, friendship, loyalty, altruism, and one by market norms, cash, prices, contracts. Both are useful, but mixing them can spell trouble. Ariely explains, we're happy to do favors under social norms, where the reward is relational, goodwill, camaraderie, and not immediate repayment. Yet in a market context, everything has a price and people expect clear payback. The Cost of Social Norms chapter shows what happens when these worlds collide. For example, consider asking your friend to help you move. Under social norms, they'll likely say yes out of kindness. Maybe you'll treat them to pizza later, but no formal payment. If you offered that friend $20 for the help, invoking market norms, chances are they'd feel insulted or might even refuse. You just put a price tag on the friendship. Awkward. Ariely recounts a real incident. AARP, a non-profit for retirees, asked lawyers if they'd provide needy seniors legal services for a modest $30 fee. The lawyers said no. Then AARP asked if they'd do it for free. Many agreed. At $30, a bargain for legal work, but still a market exchange, the request fell into a no man's land. Too little money to be worth their time, but the mention of money kept it from feeling like a kind favor. At $0, it became purely a goodwill gesture under social norms, and the lawyers were happy to oblige. Crazy but true. Introducing even a token payment can choke off someone's generosity. Ariely found that money is the most expensive motivator. Money, as it turns out, is the most expensive way to motivate people. Social norms are not only cheaper but often more effective as well. Companies know this, which is why offices try to feel family-like and offer pizza parties instead of overtime pay when asking you to work weekends. They're tapping into social norms, team spirit, loyalty, to get more effort without more money. But it's a delicate game. If the employer betrays that trust, or if an explicit price is put on the extra work, the spell breaks and market norms take over, and you'll say, "Pay me or I'm out." Similarly, brands use friendly slogans like a good neighbor, State Farm is there, to appear social. They want you to feel a personal connection, social norm, So you might overlook a fee or be forgiving, something you wouldn't do if you saw it purely as a cold market transaction. Mixing norms can also lead to social blunders. Take romantic relationships. There's a huge difference between doing something out of love, social sphere, and doing it for money, market sphere. Ariely gives a provocative example. Imagine at the end of a good date, one person pulls out cash and tries to pay the other for the lovely evening. Yikes. That's a one-way ticket to getting slapped. Intuitively, we all know certain things you do for free or not at all. Another humorous, if extreme, illustration. A man might buy his girlfriend a nice gift, social gesture, but if he itemized the cost or expected something in return immediately, it changes the whole dynamic, and probably not in a good way. In short, don't put price stickers on your friendships. The takeaway is to keep social and market norms separate. When you ask for help or collaboration, consider which frame you're using. If you offer payment for what should be a favor, you may actually discourage people. Conversely, if a situation is clearly a business transaction, don't pretend it's purely friendship. That can breed confusion or exploitation. As individuals, we can harness this too. If you need motivation to do something, try removing monetary rewards and see if social incentives, like accountability to friends or a sense of purpose, work better. Just remember, once money enters the chat, it's hard to go back. So use the power of social norms carefully. It's essentially free motivation, just appreciation and goodwill, but very fragile if treated wrongly. And if you ever feel underappreciated at a job, it might be because they're milking social norms. We're a family, when you'd really rather just have a raise, know which game is being played. We like to think we have a consistent character and solid willpower, but Ariely reveals a sobering truth. We are not the people we thought we were. When we're in a highly emotional or hot state, our preferences and morals can flip in the heat of the moment. One striking experiment Ariely conducted with researcher George Lowenstein asked college-age men a series of questions about sexual decisions, first in a normal state, and then when they were in a state of arousal induced by, some private self-stimulation via computer. The results were eye-opening. When aroused, the men were far more likely to endorse doing things they'd normally consider unethical, unsafe, or out of character. For example, not using a condom or trying risky sexual activities. Essentially, Gentleman A in a cold state might say, "I'd never pressure someone into X." But Gentleman A, hot edition, was suddenly like, "Well, maybe." Their judgment dramatically changed in the moment of passion. This experiment was a bit scandalous and probably awkward for the participants, but it proved the point. Under the influence of intense emotions, whether it's sexual arousal, anger, fear, or even hunger, our rational self goes out the window, no matter how intelligent or principled we are. In a hot state, we make decisions our cooler selves often regret. The same concept applies to self-control and procrastination. In a cool, rational state, we plan to eat salads all week, hit the gym, and finish that project early. But then the hot state sneaks up. Maybe it's late at night, you're stressed or tired, and suddenly that chocolate cake or Netflix binge now feels irresistible compared to the long-term plan. Ariely describes this as the battle between our present self and future self. In our cool, present planning state, we set ambitious goals. But when the moment of action arrives, our hot state seeks immediate gratification, and we procrastinate or indulge instead. We keep putting off hard tasks for a tomorrow that never comes, because in each moment, we'd rather relax or do something fun. That's the hot state speaking. Sound familiar? It's the classic, "I'll just hit snooze one more time," or "I'll start the diet next week" problem. So how do we beat these hot state hijacks? Ariely found a few strategies. One is to use external constraints and deadlines to our advantage. In one experiment, he let his students set their own paper deadlines for the semester. Most spaced them out, but some bunched them or left them all for the end. Other classes had fixed deadlines set by the instructor, or no deadlines at all, turn in everything by the end. The best performance came from those with strict, evenly spaced deadlines, either self-imposed or instructor set. And the worst came from the no deadlines group who procrastinated the most. Those had said, "Love." This indicates we're not great at self-control if left to our own devices. But we can recognize that and pre-commit in a cool moment to force our hand later. For instance, you might arrange with a friend to be your gym accountability partner, so you have to show up, or set up automatic deposits to savings that penalize you if you try to withdraw early. Ariely even mused about a self-control credit card where you could preset spending limits by category, forcing your future self to stick to the budget. Another tactic is to avoid tempting situations altogether when you know you'll be weak. If you're on a diet, don't keep junk food in the house so your 11 p.m. snack monster can't find Doritos. If you need to study, maybe use an app to block social media temporarily. In other words, plan for your irrational self. Accept that future you, in the heat of temptation or emotion, won't be as strong as current you hopes. Structure your environment and commitments such that even when you're hot, you can't stray too far. Ariely's research suggests even small nudges, like penalties for procrastinating, work because they leverage our anticipatory rational side to rein in the impulsive side. The broader lesson is humility. Under the right or wrong conditions, anyone can act irrationally or against their long-term interest. So don't rely on willpower alone. Use tools, routines, and pre-commitments to keep yourself on track when your emotions would pull you off. As the saying goes, never go grocery shopping when you're hungry. That's hot state, you wandering the aisles with eyes bigger than your stomach. Predictably, irrationally human. By anticipating our hot-headed moments, we can outsmart our future selves and make better choices. Ever tried to sell something you owned, only to find out nobody else values it half as much as you do? That's the endowment effect. We tend to overvalue what we own just because it's ours. Ariely explores why ownership skews our perspective so much. One striking example came from basketball tickets at Duke University. Duke has a lottery system for its ultra-in-demand basketball tickets. After a lottery, researchers asked two groups of students, those who won a ticket and those who didn't. The winners were asked how much they'd sell their ticket for. The others were asked how much they'd pay for one. The result, the sellers, who owned the ticket, wanted around $2,400 on average, while buyers would only pay about $170. That's over a 14 difference in perceived value. Simply because one group possessed the tickets, they felt they were extremely valuable. This ticket is worth thousands to me, while those without them saw a much lower value. Why do we overvalue our stuff? Ariely gives a few reasons. First, we focus on what we might lose rather than what we'd gain. When selling something, we think about parting with it, losing it, which feels painful, so we demand a high price to compensate. The buyer, in contrast, is thinking about losing money, not gaining the item. Since they don't have it yet, it's abstract. Our loss aversion makes sellers set crazy prices. Second, we develop an attachment to things we own, memories, effort invested, and a sense of identity. If you built a crappy DIY table yourself, to you it's special, you spent hours on it. To anyone else, it's just a wobbly table. This is related to the IKEA effect, where people value furniture more if they assembled it because their labor is in it. Third, we assume others see things through our eyes. If I love my old guitar dearly, it was my grandpa's. I sang my first song on it. I might believe someone else should pay a premium for all that meaning, but to them it's just a scuffed-up guitar. We forget that much of an object's value is in our heads. Ownership creates a kind of blind spot. We just can't be objective about our own possessions. Ariely also notes that sometimes our sense of ownership kicks in before we even own something, like in auctions, or when you've mentally committed to buying something, you start to picture it as yours, and then you fight harder to keep it, or win it, often irrationally. Have you ever bid more than you wanted on eBay because you got caught up not wanting to lose an item? That's pre-ownership ownership. Another everyday example, free trial subscriptions. You start using a service during a free month, and by the end, you feel like it's yours, so you pay rather than give it up, even if you barely used it. How can we counteract the ownership bias? One tip: try to view the transaction from the other side. If selling, ask, if I didn't own this, what would I pay for it? If buying, if I owned this, would I really value it so high? It also helps to put some distance. Don't make snap decisions when you're emotionally attached. Ariely suggests we consider not getting too attached in the first place. For instance, create a buffer when tempted by material things. Don't touch the merchandise, because the moment you handle it, or test drive the car, etc., you start to feel it's yours. Also, be mindful when you invest effort into something. Yes, your homemade cookies are your babies, but that doesn't automatically mean they're worth $100 each. In summary, owning things can cloud our judgment of their true value. We get possessive and sentimental. By recognizing this, we might save money and sanity, like finally cleaning that cluttered garage. Do you really need to keep that old lamp you never use? Or are you just attached because it's yours? Sometimes the best thing, though hard, is to let go, sell it, donate it, and break the spell of ownership. Just don't be shocked when the market tells you your beloved Beanie Babies collection isn't actually worth millions. It's not them, it's you. One of the most relatable irrational behaviors Ariely describes is our difficulty in closing doors. We hate giving up options, even when keeping them open costs us time or money. We try to keep our options open in life, hold on to multiple potential paths just in case. But this can lead us to irrational decisions and needless stress. Ariely illustrates this with a clever experiment disguised as a computer game. Participants saw 3 doors on screen and could click to explore them, earning some money inside each door. The twist: if you neglected a door for too long, it would start shrinking and eventually close, disappear, unless you clicked it to keep it alive. The rational strategy, once you sample and see which door has the highest payoff, would be to stick with that one door to maximize earnings. But people couldn't stand letting the other doors close. They frantically clicked all the doors to keep them open, even when the other doors had worse payouts. In doing so, they actually earned less money overall, wasting clicks on low-yield doors just to prevent them from vanishing. This frenzy to avoid losing an option led participants to miss out on the best opportunity and end up poorer. The experiment mimicked how in life we overextend ourselves, maintaining too many possibilities. We say yes to every project, keep in touch with contacts we don't actually like, or continue hobbies, jobs, relationships that we're not invested in, simply because letting them go feels like a loss. Ariely connects this to a Chinese proverb about a general who burned his troops' boats upon landing. forcing them to fight hard since there was no retreat. In contrast, we live in an age of abundant choices and safety nets, so we always have escape boats. But the cost is we never fully commit to moving forward. We end up paralyzed by choices or spread too thin. We have so many opportunities that we are paralyzed with choice, Ariely writes. We might chase small potential rewards, low-value doors, at the expense of big ones. For example, someone might keep stringing along 2 career paths or 2 romantic interests, afraid to commit to one and close the other, and end up losing both or underperforming in each. Or consider how many of us keep clutter. We hold on to old clothes, gadgets, I might need this someday items, until our closets overflow. We pay the price in space and peace of mind just to avoid the feeling of closing that door by throwing something out. So what's the solution? Ariely's advice. Sometimes you gotta close some doors. Promise it can be painful. But eliminating excess options can free you to focus on what really matters, prioritize, and ditch some low-value pursuits. If you have 10 apps running in the background, figuratively speaking, try shutting down 7 of them and put all energy into 3. It might feel like a loss initially, but what if I need those later? But the gain is greater focus and less stress. Life is full of opportunity costs. Every moment on a dead-end option is a moment not spent on a fruitful one. Indeed, Ariely points out that indecision and keeping all options open can be the costliest move of all. Like the indecisive donkey who starved between 2 hay piles, the fear of missing out, FOMO, makes us irrational. We'd rather make suboptimal choices than face the regret of closing a door. But if we recognize this, we can push back. Decide what your top priorities are and consciously close some other doors. At least for now, you'll likely find a sense of relief and a boost in progress on what you truly care about. Remember, every door you keep open, just in case, has a price. Even if it's not obvious, don't let illusory opportunities distract you from real ones. As Ariely nicely puts it, sometimes you have to let go of the meaningless options to grasp the meaningful ones. Our expectations can shape our reality, not in a magical way, but in how we perceive and experience things. Ariely shows that what we expect often determines what we experience. A fun example comes from a beer experiment at MIT. Students at a campus pub were given 2 beer samples. One was a normal Budweiser-type lager. The other was the same beer with a few drops of balsamic vinegar in it, dubbed MIT Brew. When tasters weren't told about the vinegar, a majority preferred the special brew. The bit of vinegar actually gave it an interesting taste. However, when another group was told beforehand, this one has vinegar in it, almost no one preferred it. The knowledge made them biased to dislike it. Their expectation, beer with vinegar, ew, led them to rate it worse than they otherwise would have. Intriguingly, a third group was told immediately after tasting they had liked the vinegar beer, then were told what it was, and they mostly still said they liked it. This shows that expectations can alter initial perceptions, but if you form an opinion first, uncolored by expectation, learning information afterward doesn't change the sensory memory. The practical tip: if you have a weird ingredient in your cooking, maybe don't tell your guests until after they've said it's delicious. Expectations don't just affect taste, they influence almost every aspect of our lives. They create self-fulfilling prophecies. Stereotypes are a form of expectation. Ariely cites a study involving Asian American women taking a math test. If the women were subtly reminded of their gender beforehand, answering questions about being female, they performed worse on the math test. consistent with the stereotype that women aren't good at math. But if instead they were reminded of their Asian identity, stereotype Asians are good at math, they performed better. The expectations associated with those identities actually influenced their real performance. That's both amazing and a bit scary. Simply priming a positive or negative identity changed outcomes in a concrete way. Another area expectations play out is with products and marketing. If you believe a $100 bottle of wine will taste superb, you're likely to experience it as superb, maybe noticing flavors that you'd ignore in a $10 bottle. If a painkiller has a fancy brand name and high price, you might report more pain relief than from a cheap generic, even if they have the same ingredients. We often see what we expect to see. Our brains pre-filter and interpret inputs to fit our narratives. This is why branding, advertising, even placebo effects, coming up next, are so powerful. It's not just in our heads. Well, it is in our heads, but it feels very real. Expect a pill to work, and it often will work better for you than if you doubt it. So, how can we use this insight? On one hand, guard against negative or biased expectations that can sabotage you or others. Keep an open mind. Maybe that budget smartphone will surprise you. Maybe that person you heard rumors about is actually nice. On the other hand, you can harness positive expectations as a tool. Set yourself up to expect success, and you might perform better. Give your kids encouragement that they're capable, and they may rise to it. Just be careful of false expectations. Reality can bite if you're completely off. No amount of expecting a 1975 Pinto to drive like a Ferrari will make it so, but within reason, attitude matters. As Ariely concludes, expectations can influence nearly every aspect of one's life. They can blind us or empower us. Recognize when you might be wearing expectation-colored glasses. Sometimes tasting the vinegar beer, blind, is the only way to know what you truly prefer. In short, keep your mind open, but also feed it some positive expectations when you need an edge. Just not so much that you ignore reality. We've all heard of the placebo effect. Sugar pills curing headaches because we believe they're medicine. Ariely dives into some wild ways our expectations and beliefs, often tied to price or effort, affect real outcomes. One fascinating point: expensive placebos work better than cheap ones. In an experiment, people were given a fake painkiller and told it either cost $2.50 a dose or 10 cents a dose. Both pills were just vitamin C, actually, but participants reported significantly more pain relief from the costly pill. The higher price made them believe it was potent, and so it was, at least in their subjective experience of pain. Similarly, Ariely notes that people solved puzzles better after drinking an energy drink at full price. But when the same drink was discounted, it seemed to give less mental boost. Our brains apparently figure you get what you pay for, even when objectively nothing has changed. The suggestion of quality via price can enhance performance and perception. Ariely also recounts how expectations can even make fake surgeries effective. There was a real medical study for a certain heart procedure, ligation of an artery to relieve chest pain. Some patients were given the full surgery, while others got a sham surgery, incision but no actual procedure done inside. Amazingly, the sham surgery patients reported improvements similar to those who got the real one. Just thinking they were treated helped them, which threw into question whether the surgery actually worked beyond placebo. It's a bit unsettling. People underwent risk and pain for a placebo, but it underlines how powerful belief can be in medical outcomes. Now, Ariely doesn't suggest we ditch real medicine for sugar pills. The ethical questions are huge. Is it okay to charge more or lie to patients? if it makes a treatment work better. Probably not straightforwardly. However, the placebo effect could be harnessed in positive ways. For instance, doctors being optimistic and confident with patients, without deception, can improve patient outcomes because the patient's own expectations are uplifted. There's also a message for consumers. Don't assume pricey equals better. That $100 face cream might feel luxurious, and thus you perceive your skin as smoother. But a $10 cream might have the same actual effect if you could judge impartially. If you're aware of this bias, you can potentially save money. Try not to let the price tag drive your satisfaction. Of course, that's easier said than done. Even knowing about the placebo effect, we're still susceptible to it. In fact, Ariely found when people were alerted that price might be affecting them, some of the placebo effect diminished. A rare case of knowledge actually helping shake off the bias. In everyday life, beyond medicine, the principle is belief and expectation can create real outcomes. If you truly believe that putting on a lucky jersey improves your game, it might relax you and actually help your performance. It's not magic, it's psychology. The limit, of course, is reality. A placebo won't regrow a limb or cure cancer, and positive thinking isn't a substitute for vaccines or sound finances. But within certain domains, pain, subjective experiences, confidence, the mind can do surprising things. Ariely's research leaves us with a provocative thought. Maybe we should sometimes use placebos on purpose, as long as we're not harming anyone. If a company charges a token fee for a motivational workshop, attendees might get more out of it than if it were free, because paying raises their belief in its value, a benign kind of placebo. Or if you're struggling, a harmless ritual or symbol that you believe in, be it prayer, meditation, a lucky charm, could be leveraged to improve your mindset. Essentially self-induced placebo. Just understand that your improvement came from within. As long as you're not being duped or overcharged unethically, a little self-placebo might be a nice boost. Belief is powerful, so decide where you want to place it. Or as a tongue-in-cheek lesson, if you ever need to sell a sugar pill, make sure to price it high. It'll work much better. In the final insights, Ariely examines our tendency to be dishonest, but in predictable ways. You might think there are honest people and cheaters, separated by a moral line. In reality, most of us are a bit of both. We cheat a little when given the chance, but not so much that we feel like bad people. Ariely dubs this the fudge factor. We try to balance feeling good about ourselves with gaining some benefit from cheating. For example, in experiments where people could cheat on a test to earn money, with virtually no chance of being caught, many did cheat, but only by a small amount. Very few took the maximum possible or did something blatantly outrageous. They just inflate their score a bit, enough to get a reward but still be able to tell themselves, I'm basically honest. It was just a tiny thing. Surprisingly, increasing the monetary incentive or the probability of being caught didn't drastically change the amount of cheating. That is, the threat of punishment or size of reward wasn't the main driver. Our own moral compass, albeit flexible, was. We don't rationally weigh risk and reward like traditional economics would predict. Instead, we cheat up to the level that we can justify internally. Ariely illustrates this with a memorable fridge experiment. He left 6 cans of Coca-Cola in a dorm fridge and also left a plate with 6 $1 bills in a similar setup. Over a short period, all the Cokes vanished. Thirsty students couldn't resist a free soda, but the dollar bills were untouched. Stealing money feels like real theft and would make even a broke student feel like a thief. But taking a can of soda, that's a soft transgression, easy to justify. It's just a drink. Whoever left it probably won't mind. Similarly, people are more likely to fudge an expense report or use office supplies for personal use than to pocket actual cash from the register. The more abstracted something is from money, the more we can cheat without guilt. This has big implications as we move to a cashless society. Swiping company credit cards or dealing in digital transactions might not feel like stealing, so Ariely warns dishonesty could increase if we're not careful. So how do we keep ourselves and society honest? Ariely found that reminders of morality at the right moment can sharply reduce cheating. In one experiment, simply having people recall the 10 commandments or sign an honor code at the top of a test eliminated cheating, even if the people couldn't actually recall all the commandments. It wasn't about religious faith per se. It was the act of focusing on a moral benchmark that kept them honest. Once they'd finished the test, if given another opportunity to cheat later without the reminder, they'd go back to sneaky behavior. This suggests most of us aren't consciously calculating wrongdoers. We just kind of forget our moral standards when the chance to benefit is dangling in front of us, and we slide into a little cheating. But if something or someone calls our attention to ethics, say a poster that says, "Don't be a thief, be honest," or having to sign your name to attest the truth of something, it snaps us into virtuous mode, at least temporarily. For a general self-help takeaway, don't trust yourself too much. Set up systems that remind you of your values. If you're filing an expense report, imagine it'll be audited, or think, would I feel okay if this was public? If you're on a diet, telling a friend your goal or writing it down might keep you from cheating on it. Also, be mindful of situations where dishonesty is easier, when handling non-cash items, or when you feel disconnected from the consequences. We're not saints or sinners, we're context dependent. Good people can cheat, and bad people can act honorably, depending on cues and loopholes available. Ariely's somewhat comforting point is that almost everyone cheats a little, but very few cheat a lot. We put a lid on our dishonesty so we can live with ourselves. But even small cheating can add up, as he notes. Workplace time theft and tiny frauds cost billions collectively. Recognizing our predictably irrational moral behavior is step one to improving it. In practical terms, organizations can foster honesty by removing tempting loopholes and regularly reinforcing ethical norms. As individuals, we can pre-commit to honesty, like by literally signing an honor pledge, even if not required, and avoid moral gray zones where we know we might slide. The big revelation is that our morality is a moving target, not fixed, so don't take it for granted. Give your conscience a little nudge now and then. It might be as simple as a sticky note in the fridge. Your mom is watching. Don't steal the Coke. That alone could do the trick. Dan Ariely wraps up Predictably Irrational on a hopeful note. Yes, we are irrational often in absurd and funny ways, but these patterns are not random. They're predictable and thus manageable. The goal isn't to become perfectly rational robots, boring and impossible, but to be aware of our biases so they don't constantly trip us up. As we've seen, small nudges like changing the way options are presented, or setting the right default like having deadlines, or removing a decoy, can lead to much better outcomes without changing our basic human nature. Recognizing these hidden forces can help us design our lives and society a bit smarter. For instance, knowing the power of free, a policymaker might give free health checkups to encourage participation. Knowing how we procrastinate, we might build apps that enforce staggered deadlines. Ariely's research even suggests creative solutions, like an OnStar system for emotions. He mused about a car that calls your mom if you drive too fast. Instant cool down. Understanding irrationality isn't just an academic exercise. It's a toolkit for improvement. In everyday life, after reading these insights, you might catch yourself. Am I picking that pricey option just because of a decoy? Am I really going to use this freebie, or am I falling for free hype? Are we arguing about money in a relationship where we should be in social mode instead? Did I just eat that donut because stressed me ignored plan me? Am I clinging to this gadget because of ownership pride? Did I judge that new dish unfairly due to expectation? Am I assuming expensive means effective? Did I just fudge a detail to myself? These little check-ins, said Ariely, can help us reroute our behavior. We can't change that these forces exist, but simply being conscious of them already gives us a leg up in decision-making. We can slow down at the critical moments where we tend to be predictably irrational and make a slightly better choice, or design the environment to nudge a better choice. And hey, it's also reassuring to know everyone has these quirks. If you've ever felt bad about procrastinating, overspending on something silly, or grabbing too many free cookies, welcome to the human condition. The key is not to eliminate irrationality, good luck with that, but to work with it. For example, if you know you love free, maybe trick yourself by bundling your own tasks with a free reward. Finish a report, get a free episode of your favorite show. Use that bias for good. If you know you overvalue your work, get a neutral opinion before overpricing it. If you know you compare yourself to an unrealistic social media world, deliberately unplug or change your reference group. Ariely's chapters each offer such glimpses into our psyche and how we might outsmart it once we know the trick. By understanding these hidden forces, we can set up our lives and society's policies in ways that account for our irrational tendencies. Rather than assuming people are rational agents and then being puzzled by bad outcomes, we acknowledge the predictably irrational and plan accordingly. In Ariely's words, behavioral economics can help us improve our daily life by providing concrete proof of what works. So, embrace your irrational self, but don't let it run wild. Be the scientist of your own life. Observe, laugh at yourself boldly, because some of this is just plain funny, isn't it? And make small changes. You won't always beat your biases, but you can avoid many pitfalls once you know they're there. As Ariely showed, even small nudges and awareness can lead to big differences. In the end, we humans might be predictably irrational, but with the right insight, we can also be remarkably adaptable. And that is, rationally, a great thing to know.